You can always tell where we are as a society by the messaging in our media. When I was a young person, the moral of the Spider-Man movies was stuff like sacrifice yourself for the mission, responsibility over love, don't let your feelings distract you. Now in 2026, our Spider-Man messaging is like, don't unalive yourself, get therapy. We all need community. Talk to your friends. No one should be alone. I can't tell if this means that everyone is super depressed or if we've just grown emotionally and we no longer consider the messages of old to be emotionally intelligent. So as you can probably tell, I saw Spider-Man Brand New Day yesterday and I loved it. This is a spoiler review, so stop now if you don't want spoilers. So Spider-Man A New Day picks up with Peter Parker after the last movie where in order to save the world, he deleted himself from the timeline using Doctor Strange's power. He's kind of existing in this world where nobody really knows who he is. Okay, so side note, I know that the butterfly effect is only a theory, but I just want to say I find it so hilarious that in Marvel, throughout the movies, they can delete entire people or sacrifice entire people like Iron Man or like Spider-Man, and everything in the timeline remains the same. It's just their absence that changes, right? I find that so hilarious. Like when I think about my own life, I have a friend from high school who used to love heavy metal and all of our friends used to love hip hop. And one day he let two of our like hip hop friends listen to some heavy metal. Y'all, one of them took to it so much that this guy changed his whole appearance. Like he became a full goth till this day. That was in high school. This guy is now like 38. So I'm just like, how are we going to say that removing Spider-Man completely would have no effect on the timeline? I just think that like this is one of the plot holes in Marvel that they should really change, because not only does our absence affect the timeline, but it also changes the people you would have impacted. So anyway, in this new timeline, Spider-Man decides that in order to keep everybody safe and to avoid having another situation like he had with Aunt May, he is going to keep his distance from all his friends. And he's super depressed. He's super depressed. And we kind of get a montage of him every single day. He's just fighting bad guys, coming home. Pretty much the only new thing that ever happens in his life is the Punisher. For some of his missions, the Punisher randomly shows up and like enacts all types of like rage and violence. And I just want to give a shout out to the Punisher right here, because I actually really like the characterization of the Punisher, not just because he's like a tortured soul played by John Bernthal, who I love, but also because the Punisher is like the quintessential New Yorker, right? He's like angry all the time. He's always expressing how irritated he is with the situation that he's in. He's extremely vocal about the things that piss him off, but he's also insanely kind and he is community oriented and he puts his neck out there for people. Like that's such a New Yorker thing. So Spider-Man is super depressed, and this has a number of effects on him, right? So this is one of our plots in the story, and there's about 4. So one of the plots is Spider-Man is super depressed and this is causing his hormones to go out of whack, which does a couple of things, right? It makes his powers stronger, but it also like turns his eyes black and causes him to black out sometimes and just do things that are a little beyond what he would normally do. So that's one of the plots. The second plot is he runs into a villain that actually takes over somebody's body, almost like a possession, and he can't figure out who this person is. The third plot is that Spider-Man begins working with the Department of Damage Control. So while this villain is out there possessing people and taking over their bodies and doing all kinds of crimes, the Department of Damage Control, led by Tremel Tillman, who I love. Okay, if you guys watch Severance, do you guys also love Tremel? Because I freaking love him, okay? Anyway, so Spider-Man has a dialogue with Tremel Tillman, who is the head of the Department of Damage Control, and they essentially say, hey, let's work together. This crazy person is inhabiting people's bodies and doing all types of crime to get to what we have locked in this safe, which we can't tell you what it is. But will you help us out? Like, you defeat this person and, you know, it'll help both of us, right? Now, Spider-Man has been a hero for dang near 10 years now. Why he immediately agreed to help a mysterious government agency he's never heard about protect something he doesn't know What it is, I don't know. No idea, but that's what he does. And then the final plot is him missing his friends, right? And the love of his life. And so he kind of social media stalks them and watches them and misses them. And so those are kind of the four main plots going on throughout the entire movie. So as the movie progresses, we find out that the person possessing everyone's body is Jean Grey as a young person, played by Sadie Sink. So first and foremost, Sadie Sink was a phenomenal Jean Grey, and it was actually really exciting to see Jean Grey in this period of her life. We normally see her after the Professor X has already gotten a hold of her and mentored her for a number of years. And we've never really seen her as an outcast, right? Because this storyline doesn't follow the comics. So it was kind of cool to see Jean Grey in her like villain era, being a person that's kind of lost and has no direction. And she is just possessing different bodies, and she follows Spider-Man one day and talks to him through different people, which is a really, really cool scene. And actually at one point she kind of enacts some like very random violence while she's talking to Spider-Man through different people. She makes one of those people jump into traffic. I mean, this made her kind of a complex villain, you know, because once we find out what it was that she was doing this whole time, you know, you feel for her, but then you kind of remember how she's randomly unaliving people and you're like, I feel for you, but what the heck is all of that? And so as much as I loved Jean Grey's character and I felt for her and I teared up at the end, I just had this feeling when I was watching the movie that made me think, man, what is too evil? What is enough evil and what is too evil? Because I was thinking about it and, you know, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And so some of the spaces that I go into where they have discourse around Star Wars, people are like Anakin apologists. And I love Darth Vader. I love Anakin. He's like one of my favorite characters, but I'm not an Anakin apologist, right? When he commits heinous acts and he destroys entire species and entire planets, like, I'm not going to be like, oh, that's no big deal because, you know, he was going to lose his wife. No, that's not how that works. And so I'm asking you guys this question too, as much as I'm asking myself. What is too evil? How do we justify a person's actions? What makes a person redeemable, right? Because Jean was certainly redeemable when she was attacking the government agency and Tremel Tillman. She was certainly justified then, but what about when innocent people come into play? Like, how do we navigate our villains? Like, having a good excuse to be in pain or to be sad or to lash out is like something all of us have, right? Let's be honest. We all have some big and little tragedies in our life that would justify poor behavior, but what makes somebody someone that you root for? Where do you guys draw the line? I'd love to hear from y'all about that. So anyway, one day she is taunting Spider-Man because he's getting in the way of her goal. And she tells him, hey, I'm going to go get Mary Jane. And I guess you better try to beat me there. And so he's racing to get Mary Jane. He makes it to her and they go to this rooftop and he goes there to keep her safe. And Mary Jane is like, you know, you have protected me and Ned in so many different instances for the past 4 or 5 years. Like, it's kind of crazy. And she says to him, you know, at this point, I'm starting to think, like, did we know each other and I just forgot? Like, what's going on? Like, sometimes I have these memories of you and I think that we had some kind of special friendship back in the day. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you mean. And she was like, I think you do. And then she like takes his mask off slowly and then kisses him. And it's such a beautiful scene, y'all. It is such a beautiful scene. Just goosebumps, okay? And then he discovers that actually it was Jean Grey taking over Mary Jane's mind. And y'all, I know most people found this to be so sad, but I like literally laughed. I was like, that is crazy. That is like just such a level of sadism, okay? It was, in my mind, it's like a dark humor type thing, okay? I didn't see it coming at all. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, she did not. But then I got pulled back into the emotion of it all because Tom Holland was doing so good. You know, he was acting so well in this movie. He started just tearing up, crying, just distraught. He was like, how could you do that to me? I love her so much. And so anyway, she jumps off of a building in MJ's form and tries to unalive her. Again, this is why I'm like, y'all, this was a complex character for me because I did feel for her in the end. But I was like, oh my gosh, she did all this stuff, right? So of course, Spider-Man saves MJ and then Jean jumps out of her body and, you know, drives away. So Spider-Man decides to ask Frank, will you protect MJ while I sort everything out? And like I said, because Frank is a true New Yorker, he complained about it the whole time. He was mad. He was like, this is ridiculous. And then he was like, but I'll do it. Spider-Man goes on like this journey to try to subdue Jean Grey. And he's like, hey, maybe I can use this special inhibitor that I've been using to calm my hormones down, and I can put it on Jean Grey and calm her hormones down and stop her powers. He ends up finding out that Jean Grey is going to attack Tremel Tillman at the Department of Damage Control. And he goes there to try to stop her. She possesses the mind of the Hulk and destroys everything in the building. And it just gets crazy. As you guys know, the Hulk is like indestructible, unstoppable. So Spider-Man is like fighting for his life. And then in comes the Punisher with a gun, which does nothing, okay, because the Hulk is not even remotely fazed by bullets. And it essentially is like a battle royale. And it ends with Spider-Man getting the inhibitor thing on her body and then them tranquilizing her and the Department of Damage Control taking Jean to an undisclosed place. Of course, the Hulk, as always happens with Bruce Banner, he kind of comes to his senses and calms down. Then Spider-Man goes back to the Punisher's house to go see MJ. She finds this letter that Spider-Man was supposed to give her, admitting who he was to her and that they loved each other. And she's like, why would you not tell me about this? And he's just like, I didn't want you to get hurt. I didn't want to, put you in danger's way the way that my aunt was. And she's just like, that's not your decision to make. You should have told me. And he was like, well, now you know, and I love you, right? And so because they're actually in a relationship, like you feel it when he says, I love you. And then she responds to him and says, I can see why the woman in this letter would love you, but I don't know you. And so I don't love you back. And I swear somebody must have told Tom Holland, hey, I want you to channel how you would feel if Zendaya actually meant it, that she doesn't love you. Because y'all, the look on his face when she said, I don't love you back. Oh my goodness. Niagara Falls, y'all. Just tears. Okay, tears. And also just side note here, okay, when she told Spider-Man she didn't love him, I looked at my friend and I was like, so what? Get to know him. What are you talking about? Who meets Spider-Man and is like, oh, I'm not going to give you a chance, Spider-Man. Girl, give Spider-Man a chance. What are we talking about? Why would you ever shut that down completely? Like, if you know that in an alternate universe, y'all are like soulmates, you're going to tell me you're going to be like, oh, well, not interested. See you later. Like, what? If that really happened, you would be like, looks like we were soulmates, Spider-Man, and I would like you and your six-pack to come to my dorm so that we can play Scrabble and get to know each other, okay? Stop playing with me. So Spider-Man ends up putting together that the Department of Damage Control might be fishy, and he goes to the actual headquarters to see what Tremel Tillman is doing with her. And what is Tremel doing? Torturing her, of course, because, that's how the powerful, rich, and unregulated act, right? So they're torturing her, and I should mention that all throughout the movie, Jean is saying the word VMAX, okay? And we're trying to figure out why she keeps saying VMAX. And we basically find out that Jean Grey's sister also was telepathic and had like telekinetic powers, and that they kidnapped her. And the message that her sister was sending her was VMAX. So as Jean is being tortured, her head tilts back and she looks up, and VMAX ends up being the word on the air conditioner that's blowing above her. And she realizes that they tortured her sister to being unalived, and that those were her last words because it's the only thing she could perceive to try to send out to Jean. Very, very, very dark, y'all. This is a very dark Spider-Man. If you have kids, think twice before sending them to see this movie. Anyways, long story short, Jean, as you guys know, is a boss, okay? If you've ever known Jean Grey from the comics, you know that she's super strong, stronger than the Professor. And so she loses it, and her powers like multiply times like 1,000, and she takes like mental control over everyone in the entire city, and she like blows everything up, and she is furious when she finds out her sister is gone. Spider-Man is fighting like all these people to try to get to her. He eventually ends up getting to her, and she's like expressing her pain to him and her sadness over having no one and having lost her sister. And he tells her, hey, go into my mind. And when she does, she sees his aunt and how loving his aunt was. And she sees that he has experienced loss too, and it softens her heart. Simultaneously, the Punisher has somehow made it through all of these like mind-possessed people. And he has like this big sniper, and he shoots, and Spider-Man steps in the way to stop her from getting harmed and takes the bullet for her. And as he is slowly passing away, she basically takes hold of his mind to keep him alive until he can get medical attention. They do some kind of surgery on him and save his life, and he ends up being okay. And the entire city of New York comes out to like pray for him and hope for him. And this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying about New Yorkers, okay? And New Jerseyans, okay? We are some real ones. We are loyal. We love. We just complain, okay? And that's all right. So anyway, Spider-Man ends up, getting out and being okay. He decides that he is going to try to integrate himself back into the life of Ned and, make the connections that he once had. And, so of course we end with the moral of the story being like, hey, make friends with the people around you, build community. Like, we can't get through this life alone. We cannot. And he even makes more of a connection with Frank, who is clinically insane, but a good guy. I loved it. I loved the messaging there. And of course we are hoping and praying that Zendaya comes to her senses as MJ and gets back with Spider-Man. Because what are you even talking about, girl? Why would you not give Spider-Man a chance? What's wrong with you? So anyway, that's the end of the movie. And then we have an after credits scene where it's showing like the little Spidey tracker system. And it says that Spider-Man has left Earth. So we don't know what that means. I really enjoyed this movie. I thought that it was really well done. It pulled on my heartstrings so many times because pretty much being a superhero and having magical powers was secondary to the human issue of community, the human issue of losing people, of grieving, of hurting, and how to deal with that in a healthy way. I really don't have any complaints. The movie was exciting. It took me down a couple rabbit holes. There were twists and turns that I didn't see coming. I definitely teared up, and I actually told my friends, like, now that I'm a mom, I'm just not a thug anymore. Like, I cry at movies now, which is crazy. I never used to cry at movies, but like, I just feel things so deeply, Anyway, I'm wearing my red for Spider-Man. I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. I hope you guys go see it. Tell me how you felt about it. What were your issues with the movie? What things did you think were strengths? Did you take anything from it and learn something? What was your lesson from the movie? I would give this movie like a 3.5 or 4 out of 5 stars. Like, it was just really good. Like, I just don't have complaints, and I don't think I should rank it lower just because it's like a superhero film or something like that. Like, if it's good, and it was good. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.